The sun blazed mercilessly over the city streets, turning the concrete into a furnace. Khalid adjusted his designer tie, squinting at the shimmering pavement beneath his polished shoes. His mind raced, juggling meeting schedules, boardroom battles, and the relentless pressure of keeping his empire afloat. Every step felt like a battle against the heat and the weight of his own ambition. Despite the crowd around him, Khalid felt utterly alone. People brushed past, hailing him with polite nods, yet no one truly saw him, or the void he carried within. His days were consumed by numbers, contracts, and strategies, leaving little room for anything else. The world demanded success, and Khalid had given it everything, but it never seemed enough. As he strode down the busy street, a faint sound caught his attention, a rasping cough, soft but persistent. He glanced toward a worn stone fountain at the corner and noticed an old man sitting there. Baba Musa, a beggar by appearance, looked frail and bent with age. His clothes were tattered, his hands gnarled like twisted roots, yet his eyes held a calm depth that made Khalid pause, if only for a moment. The old man held a small clay cup filled with water, offering it with a serene smile. Khalid frowned. "A beggar? Offering me water?" He shook his head, irritated by the intrusion, his pride stinging. He wanted nothing to do with this man, this fragile reminder of the poverty he had spent his life avoiding. He brushed past, ignoring the cup, his mind fixated on meetings, profit margins, and deadlines. But the heat was unbearable. Khalid's throat was dry, his lips cracking under the sun's harsh glare. His irritation faltered, replaced by a grudging recognition of his own fragility. With a reluctant sigh, he stopped. "Fine. I'll take it," he muttered, his voice tinged with embarrassment. Baba Musa handed him the cup with a gentle nod, the water cool and soothing against Khalid's parched throat. For a fleeting moment, Khalid felt something unfamiliar, a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. It was simple, quiet, and profoundly human. Yet he quickly dismissed it, letting pride creep back. He tossed the last drops over his shoulder, turned sharply, and hurried away, the bustling city swallowing him once more. As he disappeared into the crowd, a strange feeling lingered. The old man remained unmoved and serene, as if he had known this encounter was only the beginning. There was a quiet power in his presence, a weightless wisdom that seemed almost otherworldly. Khalid did not notice, but the seeds of fate had been planted with that simple cup of water, a kindness he had barely acknowledged yet would one day shape the course of his life. Khalid returned to his towering glass office, the walls reflecting the midday sun. The city stretched endlessly below, a labyrinth of ambition and opportunity, yet he felt trapped in his own golden cage. Meetings came and went in a blur, boardroom arguments, negotiations, and the constant hum of responsibility. He spoke confidently, made decisions that affected hundreds, yet inside, a quiet emptiness gnawed at him. Even at home, surrounded by luxury, the void persisted. His penthouse was adorned with rare art and designer furniture, but the silence was deafening. His family existed in name only, conversations were brief, polite, and often superficial. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances all admired his wealth, but no one shared his burdens or understood the restless ache in his chest. Khalid had everything money could buy, yet he lacked the most essential things: connection, empathy, and peace. Meanwhile, Baba Musa remained a fixture in his neighborhood, unnoticed by most. Each day he sat quietly by the same fountain, enduring the heat, the rain, and the cold. Despite his hardship, there was a sense of contentment about him, a quiet strength that wealth could never buy. He spoke to no one in particular, yet his presence seemed to touch the lives of those who paused long enough to see. The cup of water, once a simple act, had already begun to fade from Khalid's mind. In the hustle of his life, he had dismissed it as a trivial encounter. Yet, unknowingly, the gesture had left a mark, like a pebble thrown into a pond, its ripples spreading invisibly beneath the surface of his destiny. Khalid's days continued in a relentless cycle: corporate meetings, high-stakes deals, gala dinners, and exclusive parties. He was admired, feared, and envied, yet loneliness shadowed every success. His relationships were transactional, friendships conditional, and love, if it existed, was tainted by power and expectation. Small crises arose frequently. Rival companies tried to outmaneuver him, colleagues questioned his decisions, and even family members subtly demanded his attention. Khalid responded with efficiency, control, and sometimes cruelty. Money solved some problems, but it never touched the deeper ones. He felt the strain in his chest, the tension in his jaw, yet he pushed on, believing that wealth and status were the ultimate shields. Baba Musa, meanwhile, continued his simple life, his frailty belying an inner richness. He noticed Khaled's presence in the city sometimes, but from afar. Occasionally, he would shake his head gently, as if understanding that the man he had offered water to was trapped by his own pride. Life had moved on, but the universe rarely forgets such moments. The cup of water remained a silent motif in Khaled's life, though he no longer consciously remembered it. It became a faint shadow at the edge of his mind, an invisible thread tying him to a future he could not yet see. The contrast between the old man's humble strength and Khaled's superficial success grew sharper with each passing day, though Khaled remained unaware. And so life went on. Khaled rose higher, accumulating wealth, prestige, and influence, yet feeling increasingly hollow. He became a man defined by what he had, not who he was. Yet somewhere, in the quiet corners of the city and the simple actions of a frail old man, fate waited patiently. The cup of water, an ordinary gesture of kindness, held the power to undo the arrogance of wealth, to teach lessons that money could never buy, and to change the course of a life that had seemed unchangeable. Little did Khaled know that the simple, overlooked act of drinking from a beggar's cup of water on that scorching day would one day save his life and transform his soul forever. Khaled's life, which had seemed unstoppable, began to unravel in ways he never imagined. It started subtly, a missed call from a major investor, a contract that fell through at the last moment, and whispers of betrayal from within his own company. But those small cracks soon widened into a chasm that swallowed his confidence whole. One afternoon, as he was leaving his office, a trusted associate approached him with pale urgency. "Khaled, there's been a problem with the overseas deal. The funds have vanished. There may have been embezzlement." Khaled's heart raced. His hands shook as he gripped the leather strap of his briefcase. How could this happen? He had built his empire on careful calculations, meticulous planning, and ruthless attention to detail. Yet, in that moment, all his control slipped through his fingers like sand. The world he had mastered, the world of wealth, power, and influence, was suddenly unrecognizable. Khaled tried to call his lawyers, his bankers, anyone who could help him. But the lines he relied on, the networks he trusted, failed him. Panic gnawed at the edges of his mind. For the first time in decades, Khaled realized that money was not an invincible shield. Within days, the situation worsened. His company faced lawsuits, creditors demanded repayment, and his reputation was attacked in the press. Khaled, once the embodiment of control, was now forced to confront his vulnerability. Sleep eluded him. Meals went untouched. Anxiety twisted in his stomach like a living thing. He retreated from the city, seeking isolation to think, plan, and survive. The penthouse, once a symbol of achievement, now felt like a cage, its luxurious walls closing in on him. He sold properties, liquidated accounts, and cut off what he once called friends, but nothing seemed sufficient to steady the storm around him. In desperation, Khaled decided to leave the familiar confines of the city altogether. He traveled to a remote village miles from the bustling metropolis, a place he had once considered insignificant, almost primitive. The air there was thinner, the roads rougher, the sun harsher. It was a stark contrast to the air-conditioned offices and marble floors he had once taken for granted. Here, survival demanded more than money. It demanded resourcefulness, humility, and patience, qualities Khaled had rarely cultivated. The first few days were brutal. Khaled struggled to adapt. The simplest tasks became challenges: finding clean water, navigating the rough terrain, and coping with the relentless sun. His body, pampered for years, now ached from exertion. He felt exposed in a way he had never known, completely at the mercy of forces he could not control. Each night, he lay on a hard cot in a rented room, staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on him. One evening, as he trekked along a narrow dirt path to a small market, disaster struck. A sudden landslide, triggered by weeks of unseasonal rain, buried part of the trail ahead. Rocks tumbled, crushing trees and blocking his only route back. Khaled froze, his heart pounding. Panic clawed at his chest. He had no one to call, no wealth to bend nature to his will, no power to command his surroundings. He was alone. Completely alone. Fear gripped him as he tried to find a safe path. The mud was slick, the rocks loose, and every step threatened to send him tumbling into the ravine below. Exhaustion and terror collided, leaving him trembling both physically and mentally. He fell to his knees, gasping, tears mixing with the rain on his face. For the first time, Khaled realized the true fragility of human life, how fleeting and unpredictable it could be. And then, in the midst of that despair, he remembered. A faint memory, buried under years of ambition and arrogance, emerged. A frail old man sitting by a fountain, offering him a cup of water on a scorching summer day. Khalid had barely acknowledged him then, too consumed by pride to see the generosity before him. But now, as fear gnawed at his soul, the memory came back with vivid clarity. Baba Musa, the beggar, the water. Khalid's mind raced. Could it be fate that had led him to this place, to this moment? He had scoffed at small acts of kindness in the past, dismissing them as inconsequential. Yet now, in the face of nature's merciless power, he understood their true weight. The smallest gesture, a cup of water, a smile, a moment of compassion, could carry a force stronger than money, stronger than power, stronger than any armor he had ever built around himself. As if guided by some unseen hand, Khalid continued along the treacherous path, leaning on walls, rocks, and trees, until he stumbled upon a faint figure in the distance. His heart leapt with cautious hope. Could it be? The figure became clearer with each step. It was an old man, sitting calmly by the edge of the path, unfazed by the chaos around him. He was holding a small container of water. Khalid's breath caught in his throat. The same calm eyes, the same serene expression. It was him. Baba Musa. Time seemed to slow. Khalid approached, shaking, soaked, and humbled. Words failed him. The old man's presence radiated an unexplainable warmth, a sense of safety that contrasted sharply with the violent world around them. Baba Musa offered him the water without a word, as if no time had passed, as if he had been waiting all along. Khalid knelt, his hands trembling as he accepted the cup. The cool water touched his parched lips, and a wave of relief washed over him. Not just physical relief, but a profound emotional release. The fear, the isolation, the desperation, they all ebbed slightly, replaced by a sense of hope and connection he had long forgotten. For the first time in his life, Khalid felt genuine humility. He saw clearly the futility of arrogance and pride, the emptiness of wealth when confronted with life's unpredictability. Baba Musa did not speak of judgment or reproach. He simply offered help. And that act, simple yet profound, reminded Khalid of the unseen forces of kindness that had quietly shaped his destiny all along. As they rested together, the old man's presence became almost mystical. There was a quiet power in his stillness, an understanding that transcended words. Khalid realized that this encounter was no coincidence, it was fate. The cup of water, offered years ago and forgotten, had returned when he needed it most, guiding him through a trial he could never have faced alone. That night, as Khalid slept under the faint shelter of the forest, he dreamed not of wealth or power, but of compassion, mercy, and gratitude. The old man had not only saved his life but had begun to transform his soul. Khalid understood at last that true strength lay not in dominance but in humility, not in wealth but in kindness, not in control but in gratitude. And with that understanding, the path forward, however uncertain, felt a little less terrifying. The forest was quiet now, the storm having passed, leaving behind a lingering mist and the earthy scent of rain-soaked soil. Khalid awoke to the gentle sound of running water. His body ached, muscles stiff and sore from the treacherous trek the day before. Yet, more than the physical pain, it was the lingering fear that gnawed at him. Every shadow seemed threatening, every gust of wind unsettling. He sat up slowly, the weight of exhaustion pressing on him. Hunger and thirst gnawed at his stomach, but the thought that dominated his mind was the same one that had haunted him since he first saw the old man at the path. Baba Musa, the beggar. The cup of water? Could he really be here? Khalid pushed himself to his feet, moving cautiously toward the sound of the stream. There, sitting on a large moss-covered rock, was the figure he had hoped to see. Baba Musa. But there was something different this time. The old man, though still frail in appearance, seemed imbued with a quiet strength. His eyes, calm and penetrating, held a wisdom that felt almost otherworldly. He was more than just a man now, he was a presence, a force of comfort in a world that had turned against Khalid. Khalid approached slowly, unsure whether he had imagined it all. Baba Musa? His voice cracked, a mix of disbelief, fear, and hope. The old man's lips curved into a gentle smile. Khalid, he said simply, as if naming him carried a weight of recognition and familiarity. There was no judgment in his tone, only a serene certainty. Khalid dropped to his knees, exhausted and overwhelmed. I don't understand. Why are you here? His voice trembled. I should be dead. Baba Musa raised a hand, silencing him without force. You were never meant to face this alone, he said softly. He handed Khalid a small clay cup filled with cool, clear water. Drink. Let it strengthen you. There is more ahead, and you will need clarity, courage, and humility. Khalid took the cup, his hands shaking. The water was more than just relief for his parched throat. It was a symbol, a bridge between his past arrogance and the understanding he was only beginning to grasp. As he drank, he felt a surge of warmth and calm wash over him. His fear lessened, replaced by something unfamiliar yet comforting: hope. For a long moment, neither spoke. Khalid's mind raced, memories flooding back. The scorching day in the city when he had first ignored Baba Musa, the small cup of water, the arrogance that had kept him blind to the beggar's quiet power. How foolish he had been, he realized. How blind. The old man's kindness had been offered freely, without expectation, yet Khalid had dismissed it. Now, in the shadow of death, he understood its true value. I am sorry, Khalid said finally, his voice low and sincere. I never appreciated your help. I never thanked you. I was arrogant, selfish, blind. Baba Musa's eyes softened, but his expression remained calm. The past is gone, Khalid. What matters is what you do with the present. You have been given a second chance, and you must choose how to live from this moment forward. Khalid's heart ached. Tears welled in his eyes, but they were not only tears of fear. They were tears of recognition, of humility, of the profound realization of how fragile life truly was. He had survived storms of his own making, both literal and metaphorical, and now he faced a choice: to continue clinging to arrogance and pride or to embrace the lessons he had ignored for so long. Baba Musa rose slowly, gesturing for Khalid to follow him. There is a place nearby where you can rest safely. The night is long and the path is not easy, but you are not alone. I will guide you. They walked together through the misty forest, the old man's calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed Khalid's mind. Every step was deliberate, careful, yet confident. Khalid felt the weight of his previous life, the ambition, the arrogance, the isolation, falling away, replaced by a cautious reverence for the world and for the kindness he had once dismissed. As they reached a small clearing, Baba Musa pointed to a modest shelter, built from wood and leaves. This will protect you from the night. Rest, eat, and regain your strength. Tomorrow we will begin the journey forward. Khalid hesitated, feeling unworthy of the care offered. I don't know if I deserve this. After all I have done. Baba Musa shook his head gently. Deserving is not the point, Khalid. Life is not about deserts or rewards. It is about compassion, about choices, about the willingness to embrace change when it comes. You have been given this moment. It is enough. That night, Khalid slept on the hard floor of the small shelter, the sounds of the forest around him strangely soothing. He dreamed of the past, the first cup of water, the faces of people he had ignored, the hollow victories of wealth. And he dreamed of the future, though it was uncertain, filled now with the possibility of growth, redemption, and connection. When he awoke, the sun had risen, casting golden light through the trees. Baba Musa was already awake, tending to a small fire and preparing a simple meal. Khalid watched him quietly, marveling at the old man's strength and composure. Despite the years, despite the hardships, he radiated a serenity Khalid had never known. As they ate, Khalid spoke little at first, his thoughts too tangled to form words. Yet the old man's presence, his patience, and his quiet guidance conveyed a message far stronger than any speech: that life's greatest lessons often come from those we least expect, and that true strength is found in humility and gratitude. By midday, Khalid had begun to feel a shift within himself. He understood that his journey was far from over, but for the first time, he approached it with clarity and humility. Baba Musa was not merely a savior in a physical sense. He was a teacher, a mirror reflecting the man Khalid could become if he embraced the values of compassion and selflessness. As they prepared to continue on the path out of the forest, Khalid paused, looking at the old man with a newfound respect. I understand now, he said quietly. It was never about wealth, power, or control. It was about kindness. And I want to learn. I want to live differently. Baba Musa nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Then you have already begun. Remember the water, Khalid, not just as a drink but as a symbol. Let it remind you of this moment, and let it guide you through the choices you will make. With that, they stepped forward together, the path uncertain but shared. Khalid no longer felt the paralyzing fear that had gripped him the day before. He had been reminded of what truly mattered: life, humility, gratitude, and the quiet power of compassion. And somewhere deep within him, he felt a spark, a fragile but growing belief that, despite everything, he could change. That he could survive not just the dangers of the world, but the arrogance and emptiness that had once defined him. And that spark, small yet undeniable, was enough to carry him forward into the next chapter of his life. The sun rose slowly over the forest clearing, its golden light spilling through the branches and casting long, dappled shadows. Khalid felt the warmth on his face but hardly noticed. His thoughts were heavy yet strangely calm, a mixture of reflection, remorse, and newfound clarity. For the first time in years, he saw himself without the filters of pride and ambition. The man he had been, the arrogant businessman consumed by wealth and control, felt distant, almost like a stranger. Baba Musa prepared a simple breakfast of bread and water, placing it gently before Khalid. The old man did not lecture or scold. He simply moved with quiet purpose, demonstrating a life lived in harmony with patience, humility, and respect. Khalid ate slowly, each bite a reminder of the simplicity he had long ignored, the value of nourishment beyond mere sustenance, the quiet power of living with intention. As they walked along the forest path later that morning, Khalid reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The landslide, the treacherous terrain, the suffocating fear, each had forced him to confront the limitations of money, power, and ego. He realized how fragile life truly was and how often he had taken safety, comfort, and love for granted. The encounter with Baba Musa, both the first and now the second, was not a coincidence. It was a wake-up call, a lesson carved into the very fabric of his being. "I never understood," Khalid began quietly, his voice tentative. I thought wealth was everything. I believed that if I had power I could control life. But now, I see how wrong I was. I ignored people, dismissed kindness, and almost lost myself in the process." Baba Musa listened, his expression calm, almost serene. "Control is an illusion, Khalid. Life moves in ways we cannot predict. But what we can control are our choices, our actions, and the way we treat others. You have been given an opportunity to choose differently. That is more valuable than all the money in the world." Khalid nodded slowly, feeling the truth of the words settle deep inside him. Every encounter, every decision, every arrogance-fueled mistake had led him here, not to punishment but to understanding. For the first time he felt the weight of gratitude, the awareness of how small acts, like the cup of water offered years ago, carried a power far beyond what he had imagined. When they returned to the edge of the village, Khalid noticed the simplicity of life around him. Children played barefoot on dirt paths, women carried water from the stream with quiet efficiency, and elders shared stories beneath the shade of trees. There was no grand wealth here, no towering skyscrapers, no luxury cars, but there was laughter, connection, and contentment. Khalid felt a pang in his chest. He had spent so much of his life chasing what could not bring him happiness, while the world's true treasures had been quietly present all along. Baba Musa led Khalid to a small shelter where they rested for the afternoon. Khalid sat quietly, staring at the fire, thinking about the changes he needed to make. It was not just a matter of surviving the immediate danger, but transforming the man he had been. He understood now that wealth without empathy or connection was hollow. Power without humility was meaningless. And pride without compassion was destructive. Over the next few days, Khalid's transformation began in small but profound ways. He helped in the village, carrying water, repairing fences, and sharing meals with those around him. The villagers, at first cautious of the city man, soon welcomed his efforts. Khalid felt an unfamiliar satisfaction, not the thrill of profit or success, but the quiet joy of contributing to something larger than himself. He learned the power of listening, of helping without expectation, of valuing people over possessions. Baba Musa, ever patient, guided him not with words alone but through example. Khalid observed how the old man interacted with the villagers, with respect, patience, and care. Every action seemed deliberate, filled with meaning. Khalid realized that true wealth was not measured in money, but in relationships, trust, and integrity. At night, Khalid reflected on his life before the forest. He thought about his family, distant, estranged, caught in the shadow of his ambition. He thought about colleagues and friends, loyalty and trust compromised by his pursuit of profit. For the first time he felt a longing to repair those broken connections, to make amends, and to live in a way that would not leave him isolated and empty at the end of his days. "Baba Musa," Khalid said one evening, his voice trembling slightly, "when I return to the city, how do I live differently? How do I keep this clarity and humility alive, surrounded by everything I once valued so highly?" The old man's eyes met his, calm and knowing. "Remember the water, Khalid. Let it remind you that small gestures have great meaning. Let it guide your actions, your choices, and your interactions. True change comes not from sudden wealth or grand gestures, but from consistent acts of kindness, honesty, and humility. Live that way, and you will find the fulfillment you have been seeking." Khalid nodded, feeling the weight of those words sink into his heart. He knew it would not be easy, old habits die hard and the city would not change to suit him. But he felt stronger now, guided by understanding rather than ambition, empathy rather than pride. He resolved to act with purpose, to repair relationships, and to make the wealth and influence he had earned serve the greater good rather than self-interest. Before departing the village, Khalid knelt before Baba Musa. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying the full weight of gratitude, humility, and recognition. "You have given me my life back, not just physically but truly. I will not forget this." Baba Musa placed a hand lightly on Khalid's shoulder. "The life was never mine to give. It was always yours to live. Remember that. Choose wisely." As Khalid walked away from the forest and toward the city, he carried more than a renewed body. He carried a transformed soul. Each step felt deliberate, measured, filled with awareness. The streets, once familiar, now seemed different, not in appearance but in the lens through which he saw them. People were no longer obstacles or tools, but fellow travelers with their own stories, struggles, and hopes. He understood that connection mattered more than control, compassion more than competition. The memory of Baba Musa and the cup of water remained vivid, a guiding symbol for the man Khalid was becoming. He realized that life was fragile, that wealth alone could not shield him from loss or fear, and that true fulfillment lay in generosity, gratitude, and empathy. He vowed to carry this lesson forward, not as a fleeting inspiration, but as a constant practice, shaping his actions and decisions from that day forward. Returning to the city, Khalid began with small changes. He reached out to estranged family members, offered support to friends he had wronged, and began helping those in need quietly without seeking recognition. Every act, no matter how small, reminded him of Baba Musa's lesson, that kindness, like water, could sustain life in ways that money never could. Khalid's transformation was not instantaneous, nor was it easy. He faced skepticism, resistance, and moments of doubt. But each time he faltered, he recalled the forest, the cup of water, and the quiet wisdom of the old man who had taught him that the most profound lessons are often the simplest, and the most lasting change comes from the heart. By the time Khalid had fully returned to the city, he was no longer the same man who had left. He walked through the bustling streets with humility, greeted colleagues with genuine warmth, and approached every decision with consideration for its human impact. He had learned that wealth and power are fleeting, but the lives we touch, the kindness we offer, and the integrity with which we live endure far beyond our time. And so, Khalid's journey of reflection and transformation continued, not just in action but in the ongoing renewal of his spirit. The cup of water, once a forgotten gesture, had become a symbol of his rebirth. The encounter with Baba Musa, both past and present, had awakened him to life's true treasures, guiding him toward a future where compassion, humility, and gratitude shaped every step he took. The city greeted Khalid differently now. The towering skyscrapers and bustling streets that had once symbolized ambition and success now seemed less imposing, more like a backdrop to the lives around him. He walked among the people with a new awareness, noticing the small acts of struggle and kindness that had gone unnoticed before. The street vendor offering extra bread to a hungry child, the mother comforting her crying infant, the elderly man struggling with his groceries. For the first time, Khalid realized that true power was not in wealth or influence, but in the capacity to uplift, protect, and serve those around him. Every decision, every interaction could now carry meaning beyond personal gain. He began quietly, helping where he could, funding local schools, supporting medical clinics, and creating programs for the poor. But it was not the scale that mattered, it was the sincerity. Each act, each gesture, was a reflection of the transformation that had begun in the forest and the lessons of Baba Musa. Khalid also sought to repair his personal relationships. He visited family members he had ignored for years, offering genuine apologies and open hearts. At first they were wary, unsure if his change was real. But Khalid's humility, consistency, and evident remorse spoke louder than any words. Slowly trust rebuilt itself. The warmth of shared meals, laughter, and conversation reminded him that connection was far richer than gold, and love far more valuable than titles or possessions. At work, Khalid's transformation was equally profound. He approached his employees differently, listening to their concerns, valuing their contributions, and fostering a culture of respect and collaboration. His colleagues, initially skeptical of his sudden change, soon recognized the sincerity of his efforts. Business decisions were no longer made solely for profit, but with consideration for their impact on people and community. Khalid discovered that leadership founded on empathy and integrity could achieve more enduring success than one ruled by fear or ambition alone. Despite the outward improvements, Khalid still faced internal challenges. Old habits, pride, impatience, and the desire for control resurfaced occasionally, testing his resolve. But he met these moments with reflection, remembering the forest, the cup of water, and Baba Musa's quiet wisdom. Every struggle was an opportunity to reinforce the lessons he had learned, that humility is strength, kindness is power, and gratitude is the foundation of a meaningful life. Khalid also made a point of honoring the man who had changed his life. Baba Musa, though no longer in the forest, had left an indelible mark on him. Khalid often spoke of him to others, not to glorify himself, but to share the lesson, that even the humblest act of generosity can shape destinies. He established programs in Baba Musa's name, supporting the elderly, the poor, and those living on the margins, ensuring that the old man's legacy of kindness would continue long after their paths had diverged. The symbolic cup of water became central to Khalid's life philosophy. He kept a small replica on his desk, a quiet reminder of the day he had been humbled, the day he had learned that no one is too small to offer help, and no one is too proud to receive it. Whenever he faced difficult decisions or moments of doubt, he looked at the cup and remembered the lessons it carried: patience, compassion, humility, and the transformative power of selfless action. One day, Khalid visited a neighborhood he had once ignored, walking past the fountains and streets where he had first encountered Baba Musa. Memories surged: the scorching heat, the frail hand offering water, the indifference he had shown. He knelt by the fountain, placing his hand gently in the cool water, and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. That simple gesture connected him to the past, grounding him in the present and guiding him toward the future. Over time, Khalid became known not only as a successful businessman but as a man of integrity, compassion, and generosity. People sought his guidance not because of wealth, but because of the fairness, understanding, and care he showed. The community grew stronger, lives improved, and the ripple effects of his transformation touched more people than he could ever count. Yet Khalid remained humble. He knew that the journey was ongoing, that each day required vigilance, self-reflection, and the willingness to act with kindness. He understood that change was not a single moment but a lifelong commitment. Every decision, every interaction became a chance to reinforce the lessons learned in the forest, guided by the memory of a cup of water and the quiet wisdom of a frail old man who had seen the strength within him before he did. As Khalid looked out over the city from his office, he no longer saw a jungle of ambition or a maze of personal gain. He saw lives intertwined, struggles endured, and potential waiting to be nurtured. The skyscrapers were no longer symbols of dominance, but markers of opportunity, to use his influence, wealth, and knowledge to make meaningful change. Khalid realized that wealth alone could never guarantee safety or happiness, but when paired with compassion, it could become a force that healed, empowered, and uplifted others. Baba Musa's presence remained with him even in absence. Khalid often imagined the old man's serene gaze, the gentle offering of water, the unspoken wisdom. That encounter had been more than survival. It had been a rebirth, a reminder that the simplest acts carry the greatest weight, and that the true measure of a person lies not in what they possess, but in the lives they touch. And so, Khalid's life found balance. The empire he had built endured, but it no longer defined him. The lessons of humility, gratitude, and service shaped every choice he made. Wealth became a tool, not a trophy. Power became responsibility, not pride. And kindness became the compass by which he navigated a world that was often chaotic, unpredictable, and unforgiving. In quiet moments, Khalid would reflect on the day the beggar offered him water, recalling the scorching summer sun, the bustling city streets, and the faint but undeniable aura of wisdom around Baba Musa. He realized that the old man had not only saved his life physically but spiritually. Khalid's transformation was a testament to the ripple effect of simple acts of compassion, how one moment of generosity could alter the course of a lifetime. By embracing humility, gratitude, and kindness, Khalid had not only changed himself but had changed the world around him. The city became a better place, not because of wealth or influence alone, but because one man chose to honor the lessons of a frail old beggar who had offered him water when he was most in need. Khalid had learned that true wealth is not measured in possessions, but in love, integrity, and the courage to act with compassion. And as he stood by the fountain once more, watching children play, vendors laugh, and the community thrive, Khalid knew without a doubt that life's greatest power lies not in what we take, but in what we give. The cup of water had become a symbol of hope, redemption, and the enduring truth that even the smallest act of kindness can ripple through time, touching lives in ways unimaginable. Years had passed since Khalid's life-altering encounter with Baba Musa. The city had grown, its streets busier than ever, yet Khalid moved through it with a quiet purpose and awareness that set him apart. He no longer walked with the rigid pride of a man consumed by wealth. Instead, he walked with humility, attentiveness, and a heart tuned to the lives of those around him. One hot afternoon, as Khalid walked along a familiar street near the fountain where it all had begun, he noticed a young boy sitting on the pavement. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, and a small tin cup rested in his hands. The boy's eyes were weary, yet a faint glimmer of hope lingered in them. Khalid felt a pang of recognition, the same mixture of sorrow and empathy that had first stirred in him when he saw Baba Musa years ago. He approached slowly, crouching to meet the boy at eye level. "Are you thirsty, my son?" Khalid asked gently. The boy's gaze flicked up, hesitant and wary. "Yes, sir," he said softly. Khalid reached into his bag and handed him a small, clean cup of water. The boy drank quickly, his lips pressing eagerly to the edge, and then looked at Khalid with wide eyes, surprise mingling with gratitude. Khalid smiled, a warmth spreading through him. He remembered that scorching day so many years ago, the arrogance, the heat, the small cup offered by a frail old man who had changed his life forever. Now he was the one offering a chance, a gesture, a moment of kindness that could ripple into a life not yet fully formed. This simple act reminded Khalid that life was a cycle. The kindness once given to him had come full circle, and it was now his turn to continue the chain. He knelt beside the boy. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You are not alone. Someone cares. Someone sees you." The boy smiled faintly, clutching the cup. Khalid placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The gesture was small, but the boy's eyes lit up with a spark Khalid had not seen in years. It was hope, the same kind of hope that Baba Musa had given him. As Khalid continued his walk, he reflected on how much he had changed. Wealth, power, and influence no longer defined him. The empire he had built was still important, but it had become a tool rather than a shield or a source of pride. Every decision he made now carried consideration for the people it would affect. Every investment included thought for the community, and every interaction reminded him that kindness was never wasted. Over time, Khalid began to notice subtle but profound transformations in the city itself. Neighborhoods where people had once struggled now thrived under initiatives he had quietly supported. Clean water programs, educational scholarships, and local clinics were helping families regain stability and hope. Streets that had once seemed harsh and impersonal now hummed with connection and life. Yet, Khalid understood that transformation was not just external. The city mirrored the changes within him, but he knew the journey of compassion, humility, and generosity never truly ends. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, had the potential to inspire another. A cup of water could save a life, but it could also ignite courage, hope, and the will to pass that kindness forward. One evening, Khalid attended a small community gathering in a local square. He watched as children played, parents conversed, and neighbors shared food and stories. A young woman approached him, her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said. "Because of your support, our school has new books, a safe classroom, and teachers who truly care. You've given us more than help, you've given us belief." Khalid felt a lump in his throat. The gratitude in her voice reminded him of the same feeling he had experienced when he first accepted a cup of water from Baba Musa. The humility, the awe, and the quiet understanding that even small gestures have enormous power. He realized that he had not only helped others, he had also transformed himself, learning that the heart's capacity for generosity is limitless when guided by intention and empathy. Later that night, Khalid walked alone to the fountain near his office. The water sparkled under the streetlights, reflecting the city's life and movement. He knelt, placing his hand in the cool water, and whispered a silent thank you, not for himself, but for the life lessons that had been entrusted to him. He felt the presence of Baba Musa in that quiet moment, as if the old man's wisdom were embedded in every ripple of the fountain. Though the man had long since disappeared from the city, his influence remained, subtle yet profound, guiding Khalid's heart in ways words could not fully capture. Khalid began to notice similar patterns everywhere he went. Young people helping the elderly, strangers sharing food, communities coming together during times of crisis. The ripple effect of compassion was real, and he realized he was both witness and participant in a vast, invisible network of kindness. He had learned that generosity is contagious, and that even the smallest gestures, an offered drink, a shared smile, a word of encouragement, can reshape destinies. One day, Khalid encountered a woman struggling to carry a basket of vegetables along a crowded street. Without hesitation, he offered to help her, walking beside her until she reached her destination. The woman smiled, gratitude shining in her eyes. Khalid felt a quiet satisfaction, not the thrill of accomplishment, but the deeper fulfillment of human connection. It was a reminder that true wealth resides not in possessions, but in empathy, courage, and the ability to make life a little easier for others. As the years passed, Khalid's influence continued to grow, not in power or notoriety but in impact. Schools flourished, families regained stability, and communities found hope. And yet, Khalid remained humble, aware that the work was never truly finished. Each new challenge, each new opportunity to help, was a chance to honor the lessons he had learned in the forest, guided by the memory of a cup of water and a frail old man who had seen the strength within him before he did. He began to mentor others, teaching not about business, wealth, or power, but about character, compassion, and resilience. He shared his story widely, not to seek praise, but to inspire others to act with generosity and empathy. He reminded them that the smallest acts, offering food, lending a hand, or showing kindness to someone in need, can ripple across time and space in ways no one can predict. And somewhere in the city, a young boy, much like the one Khalid had first helped that afternoon, would someday remember a kind gesture, pass it on, and continue the cycle. Khalid understood that life's most profound lessons are rarely taught in classrooms or boardrooms. They are learned in moments of quiet compassion, in the simple choices to give when one could have ignored, to care when one could have turned away. On quiet nights, Khalid would sometimes imagine Baba Musa, watching over the city with the same calm wisdom he had shown in the forest. The old man had disappeared from the streets long ago, yet his legacy lived on, not just in Khalid but in every life touched by the ripple of his kindness. Khalid often whispered a silent promise, to carry the torch forward, to ensure that no act of compassion ever went unnoticed, and that every gesture, no matter how small, could create the possibility of transformation. And so, the cycle continued. The boy Khalid had helped would one day help another. The woman receiving guidance today would one day guide someone else. Each act of kindness fed the next, building an invisible network of hope, gratitude, and human connection. The city, once a place of ambition and isolation, had become a living testament to the power of generosity. In that way, Khalid's story, and the story of the cup of water, lived on. It was a reminder that life is unpredictable, fragile, and fleeting. Yet within that uncertainty lies the power to change, to forgive, to love, and to create ripples that may one day save lives, transform hearts, and inspire generations. And though Baba Musa had faded from view, his influence remained, subtle yet enduring, a quiet force reminding every heart it touched that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in what we give, that courage is not measured in victory but in kindness, and that even the smallest act of compassion can ripple across lifetimes, changing destinies in ways no one could foresee. Khalid smiled, kneeling once more by the fountain, watching the water glint in the moonlight. He knew that the cycle of kindness would continue long after he was gone, and that one day, someone else would pass a cup of water to another soul, just as Baba Musa had passed it to him. And in that, the story and its lesson would endure forever.